Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live. Talk radio without the static. Email your questions and comments to lynncullenshow@gmail.com. And now your host, Lynn Cullen.
Hey there, guys. I'm in did you think it would be like this? The end of your beloved country? Did you think it would be like this? That you'd, go on living your life and run your errands and see your friends and tend to your garden and watch on television as your country is stolen from you. It's really I don't know. I keep waiting for some huge event to counter what's going on. Someone of stature. By the way, speaking of someone with stature, where I don't understand the silence of Barack Obama. Yeah, I know he said some things. But the full-throated condemnation, the maybe getting George W. out to do the same. A general or two, or three or four. We're desperate for these voices of authority and yet I know that we are the foot soldiers here. It is our country. But what I am seeing now is so distressing that I really this is what he wants. He wants the distress to yield to paralysis, or the distress to yield to fury that begets violence. It seems as if we're being cornered, right? And because he's long ago set up this other universe, this other reality, these other facts, this other narrative, and he's got the bully pulpit, and he's got Fox News, and he's got X, and he's got all that social media stuff, and he's got the Russians aiding and abetting all the time. I have seen some veterans are apoplectic over what he did at Fort Bragg yesterday. And understand that what he did was politicize the military. One credible report says that the soldiers who were arrayed before him as he spoke yesterday spoke falsehoods, derided former President Biden, and the governor of California, and coaxed them, these soldiers in uniform, arrayed before him, to jeer elected office holders. I know veterans who are beside themselves at that display because it is against everything that our military and that every soldier knows is proper behavior in uniform. Our military is non-partisan. And Trump apparently had the soldiers that were arrayed before him picked. He wanted the fittest, no fat ones. He wanted ones that voted for him. He wanted a rally with men in uniform. And that's what he did. And I saw Tom Nichols, who I respect, former Republican, writes for The Atlantic, I believe has taught at West Point. I'm not sure, but he's a vet as well. And he was apoplectic yesterday about this. And he was saying that the fact that none of that would have happened without people in higher positions than those soldiers who were being used as props for the president. Officers higher up had to have cooperated with that, had to have said, yes, sir, when they were asked by whatever White House person set this thing up. Yes, sir, we will get you, the soldiers you want. And there were high-ranking people there. None of them had the courage to do or say anything. If we don't start seeing some real profiles in courage now, soon, I think we're in very, very big trouble. I do. And speaking of that, if you are not going to be at a No Kings rally on Saturday, shame on you. That's all I'm going to say. If Saturday we do not see millions upon millions of Americans in the streets of our cities, then we're finished. We're finished. As tanks roll down Washington streets. And you saw what he said. My God, you saw what he said about if anyone were to protest his big parade on Saturday. And as I said, millions are going to protest. But he was warning anybody who dared try to interrupt his parade that they will be met with very heavy force. Those were his words. This is a guy who vowed to uphold the Constitution of the United States. I'm not saying any. I'm sorry. I am so beside myself. Protest will be met with very heavy force. It's why he's doing what he's doing. He's showing. He's trying to intimidate us, trying to scare us, trying to make us fearful of exercising our First Amendment rights to protest. In fact, our duty as Americans to protest this assault on our country. Unbelievable. It's just unbelievable. The fact that I've said all this before, so the fact that he's so itching to be the king that he couldn't even wait for a real, serious issue, disturbance, riot, something. He had to say there was one when there wasn't. And since manufacturing reality is something that he's always done and that he's aided and abetted with by Fox News and the others. I mean, the very day he federalized the National Guard in California against the governor's wishes, the LAPD put out a statement commending the demonstrators who had exercised their First Amendment rights responsibly. That statement from the LA police stands next to the statements from the White House that peaceful demonstration was a rebellion, was an attack. My God. Michelle Goldberg's piece in the Times, titled "This is what autocracy looks like," points out that, guys, this is it. We are pretty much there if we don't stop it now. He's doing everything that needs to be done to set up. He's done it already, much of it, gotten rid of all the people who could have stopped him at any point. Now, as you look back and you see how the very first things he did by getting rid of all the inspectors general and then putting his stooges in all law enforcement, getting rid of the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, getting rid of a lot of higher up military who were not trustworthy to him. You see how this is a step-by-step plan to take our country over. And we're supposed to watch it on TV? He's arresting union leaders. He's arresting members of Congress. He's arresting judges. This is going on all over the country. He has already totally cowed one of our political parties. Don't tell me this guy is a joke or a moron. He is a mortal threat to us all. Goldberg says, if what we have seen in just the last few days, if you saw this in any other country, soldiers sent to crush dissent, union leaders arrested, opposition politicians indicted, it would be clear that you were looking at an autocracy. And she says the question, the only question now, is whether Americans can be roused to respond. Which is why I say, if you are not at one of those rallies on Saturday, and I don't care what reasons you have that it would be difficult, I got reasons too. I got physical reasons. I've got a lot going on Saturday. I don't want to go, but I have to go. And so do you. If it's the usual crowd standing there on Grant Street, we're done. We're over. What needs to be there on Grant Street needs to go down every street in the downtown. So many people that you can't see the end of it. The best thing that would happen is if you got down there and couldn't get anywhere near to where the speakers were. You need to just stand with the American people by the thousands and thousands and thousands. As Goldberg says, there's no sidestepping. There's no standing on the sidelines when you have a president right now who has deployed the military in an American city based on ludicrous falsehoods about a foreign invasion. She says it's hard to think of a clearer signpost on the road to dictatorship. And so while he's throwing himself this odious military parade, this birthday party on Saturday, we need to be in the streets. Every one of us. You know, the congresswoman who has now been indicted, she's charged with 2 felonies. Have you seen the video of what there's video. I mean, there's visual evidence of the what she supposedly she did nothing. I just want to say, you can see it for yourself. Check out the video. She was outside of an ICE detention facility. She was out there with the mayor of the city, mayor of Newark, I believe. He ended up, as you know, being arrested that day and jailed. And then he was let out and they dropped all charges because they didn't have a leg to stand on. But they wanted to arrest him and show, we'll arrest anyone. We don't care if you're the mayor. We'll trump up charges, which they did. And then when everybody's moved on to our next outrage, we'll let him go because he didn't do anything. And she was there as well, as were these masked, camoed ICE Gestapo people. And when they grabbed the mayor, there was a scrum of people. She was there as well. And there was movement, jostling going on. You can see the video. She's sort of shoved by the crowd into, I guess, a person who was an officer. She's charged with assaulting the officer. She did not assault anybody. She could make the charge that she was assaulted. It was a scrum. But he's doing it. He's arresting, jailing, indicting, charging elected officials. It's amazing. And speaking of elected officials, I hate to tell you about John Fetterman, many of your senator. Yeah, Fetterman, first of all, was observed at Butterworth's, which is a Washington, D.C. Hangout that is known as a MAGA haven. And there was John Fetterman the other day, and he was accompanied by the editor of Breitbart, Matt Boyle. And guess who joined them for about 20 minutes? Steve Bannon. Yeah. So John Fetterman is dining with the Breitbart editor and Steve Bannon. He also, what is this other thing I just saw? He has spoken out about what's going on in LA. And unfortunately, he is not representing me with what he chose to say. This is from, I believe, the New York Times, not sure. Senator John Fetterman of Pennsylvania warned fellow Democrats that they could face a political backlash if they were seen as failing to sufficiently condemn acts of violence by protesters in Southern California. Fetterman is warning us that we need to speak out against the violence of the protesters. Fine. But as you're doing it, that is hardly representative of 99% of those who are protesting. This is if you're watching Fox News and you think all that's going on are torching of cars and looting, when it is not representative of what is going on. Otherwise, why would you have the Los Angeles Police Department actually putting out a notice commending the demonstrators? But Fetterman, who's now hanging with Breitbart guys and Bannon, Monday, he posted a photo on social media of a car inflamed, and a masked person waving a Mexican flag. And he wrote this: "This is anarchy and true chaos." Fox couldn't have said it better. What it is against the law, and that idiot should be arrested. But that is not representative of why people are in the streets. And that he somehow, in all of this, is not talking about the president and his lawlessness is beyond belief. This is anarchy and true chaos, says Fetterman. My party loses the moral high ground when we refuse to condemn setting cars on fire, destroying buildings, and assaulting law enforcement. None of that has been representative of these demonstrations. And in fact, Democrats have condemned the provocateurs who have engaged in violence, and I would argue might well be being paid by Trump, who's always talking about paying demonstrators. That's Fetterman's take, and not a word on how Trump is abusing his authority, misusing the troops, inflaming. You want to see flames? I got something more inflammatory than a car burning. It's our country burning. God almighty. Fetterman. What a disaster. This is anarchy. Wow. Okay, so, okay, I'll stop for a sec. Um, and by the way, yeah, so the No Kings protest here is down in front of the city county building at I think it's 12, right? Or 12:30. 12:30 to 2:30. And I'm hoping, as I said, you won't be able to get anywhere close. No excuses. Well, I can imagine, where am I going to park? What am I going to do? No excuses. None. Zero. Zero. There's also another at, I believe, 2 o'clock at Freedom Corner in Uptown. And I think some of the people that are on Grant Street are expected to march up to that demonstration as well. So if you want to go later, that's where you go, to Freedom Corner, which is Crawford, Uptown. That's 2 to 4:30. Just saying. Oh my. Um, I'm expecting a guest in the next few minutes. to talk about some other outrages, although she is by nature non-political. She is simply in a position of helping people who are struggling in our country, struggling to put food on the table.
Lynn, I'm here if you can hear me.
Oh no, you are?
I am.
Well, why am I not seeing any calls on my... What an idiot. God bless you, Colleen. I'm looking at this thing and I'm not seeing anybody, and here you are. Thank you.
I just got on 30 seconds ago. Thanks for having me.
All right. This is Colleen Young, who is Director of Government Affairs, I believe, at the Greater Pittsburgh Community Food Bank, right? Do I have all that right?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
Okay. So, Colleen, you're saving me from fulminating further about the end of our country and stuff, but let's talk about the fact that, I mean, we still have this somewhat of a government, and in the other legislative branch, which ain't working too well these days, there's an attempt to pass what is being called a big, beautiful bill, which is essentially the budget bill, right? That the administration wants. A bill has been passed by the House and is now in the hands of the Senate. And the bill the House passed is freaking a lot of people out, including people who work in areas like you do, right? In trying to help hungry people, food insecure people get food, because they have targeted in this big, beautiful bill the SNAP, which is what? Supplemental Nutrition
Assistance program.
Thank you, assistance. I couldn't think of what the A was. Supplemental.
Some people may know of it as food stamps. That's what it used to be called before it was renamed.
So they've really gone after the food stamp program and also Medicaid, as we know. And as it stands, Colleen, what implications are there for people who may count on food stamps to have enough food if this passes as it is?
Yeah. Well, thank you again for having me, Lynn, so we can talk about this issue. And as you mentioned, it's in the Senate right now. We're actually expecting to hear more official reports coming out of the Senate Agriculture Committee today. So this is great timing. I think first, I just wanted to say, I think it's important for people to know that food insecurity is at an all-time high if we're looking at our recent history. And when we look at just over the last 2 years in Pennsylvania, food insecurity has risen by over 40%.
Wait a minute.
Grocery prices.
Colleen, can I just wait a minute? I mean, I assumed that it was the pandemic that would have been the high point, and you mean it's gone up since the pandemic?
Yes, we are serving more people more food than at any point in our 40-year history at the food bank. That's across 11 counties in southwestern Pennsylvania. We're on track to serve more than 49 million meals this year. And just as a comparison, during 2020, that was at just 40 million meals. So about 9 million more meals this fiscal year than during the pandemic. And part of the reason for that is during the pandemic, there were a lot of resources available to help people, make ends meet. We had stimulus checks, we had increased SNAP benefits, we had all sorts of resources that helped people get back on their feet and make sure that they weren't struggling while out of work. And the majority of those resources have now gone back to pre-pandemic levels, but food prices have continued to go up. So over the last 5 years since the pandemic, food prices in Pennsylvania have gone up 25%.
Wow.
And so, people they're seeing across the board increases in their basic needs, whether it's housing, utilities, food prices, but wages have not kept up with that. So we're seeing really significant increases in people who are food insecure, and these are a lot of times people who are working or seniors who are on a fixed income, and they just can't stretch their dollars as far as they used to. So that's one of the real reasons that we're.
Yeah, I have to say,
Go ahead.
I read something interesting today that said what we really need to be looking at with this situation is upping the minimum wage, because people are working. These are people that often are working, maybe even more than one job, and still they are not making enough to be food secure, or sometimes to even have a roof over their heads.
Yeah.
I mean,
and the vast majority of people who are on the SNAP program, which provides a very small amount of money. So on average, it's $6 per person per day to purchase all the groceries that you need. And folks are working in Pennsylvania. I believe it's 78% of people on the SNAP program are already working. They're just not earning enough to make ends meet. And so we're seeing people, that are in lower wage service jobs, and they are doing their best to keep their lives together, and it's would not be possible without the SNAP program. And that's why we are so concerned about these cuts, not just to SNAP, but also to Medicaid, which, if you combine those two cuts together, we're looking at $1 trillion is what was proposed in the House bill that passed. It's not possible to cut $1 trillion from food assistance and healthcare without harming people who rely on those programs. There's not a way to get from A to B there.
Okay, and so the people we're talking about are, the huge amount are older people, senior people, and children, right?
Yeah,
Well,
exactly. So the vast majority of people who participate in the SNAP program live in households with children, seniors, and people with disabilities. And so we know those are the folks who are most vulnerable, who cannot, rely on healthy, nutritious food, to maintain their outcomes. When you think of kids, the number one reason that kids don't do well in school is because they don't have enough food to eat. And seniors, we know that they have a whole plethora of health issues that get incredibly worse if they don't have access to nutritious food. And so, we are already trying to fill the gaps where SNAP does not get people to where they need to be. But for every one meal that we provide to the food bank, SNAP provides 9. So we would never be able to make up for such an incredible loss. When we're talking about SNAP alone, it's nearly $300 billion in cuts is what we're looking at over the next 10 years. And a big part of that is shifting the cost from the federal government to the state government. And that's the first time that's ever been done in the history of the program. It completely fundamentally changes the way that the SNAP program operates. And one of the biggest concerns there is that Pennsylvania and most states cannot afford the amount of money that would be shifted to them, even in the best case scenario, because there's a sliding scale of how much states would have to pay. Even in the best case scenario, when you factor in the increased administrative costs that states would also have to pay, Pennsylvania would be looking at a $325 million increase in the state budget just for SNAP alone annually, right? So we are already advocating for the state just to increase the amount that we are able to get through state dollars to help us purchase food by $8 million, and that conversation is a struggle, right? So when we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars, there's the only recourse that the state would have is either to raise taxes, cut other critical services, or cut the SNAP program. And so that would be cuts for everybody. That's seniors, that's children, that's people with disabilities. So that's our biggest concern, is just this completely fundamentally changing the way that the SNAP program has always operated. And one of the biggest things that we're thinking about is also, as we look forward into what happens in the future of the economy, in a recession, SNAP has always been able to expand and contract as the economy gets worse and gets better, so that as more people need support, such as we had during the pandemic, SNAP was able to expand. If states are required to cover the cost, state budgets don't do well during a recession. They don't do well during challenging economic times. And so the ability for the program to expand and contract as it always has, to be able to help people in whatever the situation is at the moment, that would be changed fundamentally as the program moves forward.
I don't understand. I mean, now clearly this would lead, as it is written, to sicker people. It would lead to probably some people dying. It also, my understanding is that rural communities account for a lot of beneficiaries of these programs, and but these are all the very people who put the people who wrote this bill into power. I'm so confused about how they'd want to essentially harm their own voters like this. But maybe that's not.
It is true. So 85% of counties with the highest food insecurities across the country are rural counties. And in our region, rural child food insecurity is as high as 24%. So we know there are a lot of unique struggles that are happening in rural communities. And one of the challenges is just being able to get to a place where food is available. So the grocery store may be 45 minutes away from you. Some of the places that accept SNAP right now are farmers markets, are mom and pop, even dollar stores that may be a lot closer to you, especially if you don't have reliable transportation. Those smaller retailers rely on SNAP, and if their revenue is cut significantly, they may not even be able to stay open. Similarly with Medicaid, we're looking at if rural hospitals have significant cuts in their ability to take Medicaid, then they could close the whole facility for everyone, right? So it's not just an impact on the people who rely on these programs, but anybody who receives services or shops in those stores would also be impacted, right? So it's a huge impact on rural communities, and that's something that we're really paying close attention to, because we have, like I said, 11 counties in southwestern Pennsylvania. The vast majority of our service area is rural. So we want to make sure that that those folks have an opportunity to voice their concerns about the impact that it would have on them as well.
I'm looking at some of this information that's in the bill, and some of it I don't even comprehend, because it says here that there'd be new requirements tied to work for seniors up to age 64, right, and for, this is the one that really blew me away, and parents with children over 6 years of age are no longer considered dependents.
Right.
How could a child who's 6 or 7 or 8 not be considered a dependent? What?
Yeah, it's a striking change, and we know we know that people who have school-age children, it's not as easy as just going and getting a job while your kids are in school. That depends on jobs being available during those hours, which, usually low-wage jobs or entry-level jobs, you don't get to pick and choose your hours. And so, one of the ways that SNAP operates currently is that people between the ages of 18 to 54 already are that don't have dependents and are not disabled, already have very strict time limits on how long they can receive SNAP without proving submitting paperwork every month that they are meeting that 20-hour-a-week minimum requirement for work. So one of the challenges is that we know that does not it does not increase people's ability to work. So we would love to see opportunities to modernize the program to make accessing work easier, because people are trying to do more work, trying to earn higher wages, and just not able to get there. But there's a waiver currently for people who have children that are considered dependents, age 17 and below, and that would shift to only providing a waiver for parents with children ages 6 and below. So starting at age 7 and up, that basically changes the definition of what's considered a dependent in the text of the bill. And for example, we have a family, a mom and daughter. Daughter has a disability; she's 9, and mom is not able to work because she has to stay home and care for her daughter, and they receive SNAP benefits. And mom volunteers, actually with her school backpack program, to pack food for kids who, are in a similar situation and need more assistance at home. But she has to be home when her child's home. And a lot of low-wage jobs don't offer paid sick leave. So if a child gets sick and you have to stay home to take care of them, you can't go to work, you might lose your job. So there's lots of complicating factors of how work is accessible for parents of school-age kids. This family would lose their SNAP benefit under these new restrictions, and the daughter would still retain her SNAP benefit, but it would cut mom's SNAP benefit. So that's cutting the household SNAP budget by 50%. And I don't know about most people, but I have kids, and when I look at our grocery budget for the month, all of us are factored in to one household food budget. We don't have separate budgets for people of different ages, and so this would harm kids. Even though the person losing the benefit is the parent, the child and the parent are eating together. They're working on the same budget. They live in the same household. So effectively, we're cutting budgets for families with kids, which is going to reduce the amount of food available to those children in those households.
I mean, because what can people do? Because I mean, as you know, Colleen, there's just a constant deluge of bad news coming at people.
Yeah.
And this, which would normally be a story that would get a lot of coverage, just gets elbowed aside by, something that's a lot more visual or easier to comprehend or whatever. So, I mean, what can we do other than what? The usual, call our congressmen or senators. I mean, what can an average person do?
Well, I think there are a couple things, and don't discount the value of reaching out to your elected officials. I mean, that is the number one thing we're asking people to do in this moment. This bill could move through the Senate very quickly by the end of June. We have a number of ways to help people to reach out to Pennsylvania senators and let them know that they care about protecting SNAP and Medicaid. So on our website, which is pittsburghfoodbank.org/advocate, you can click right in a statement of our review of the bill, and then to an advocacy action, where you just put in your name and address, and it sends it right off to Senator McCormick and Senator Fetterman. We also have an 800 number, which is 800-708-8229. We'll automatically put you right through to Senate offices so that you can tell them to vote no on cuts to SNAP and Medicaid. And sharing with other people in your circles and making sure that folks are aware of this. As you mentioned, there's a lot of competition for the news cycle right now. And it's really important that people understand how harmful the provisions in this bill would be to the most vulnerable people in our communities. And that creates bad outcomes for everybody. And so, we really want to make sure that people are aware and able to, voice their concerns before this bill moves through and we don't have that opportunity anymore.
If somebody wanted to, okay, give your website again.
It's pittsburghfoodbank.org /advocate. We'll take you right to our advocacy page, but if you just go to the main website and you use the menu options to get to our advocacy page, that'll work as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
So pittsburghfoodbank.org /advocacy or advocate.
Just advocate.
Advocate.
Yeah.
I get the form right. Do you guys need volunteers? I mean, maybe somebody has the capacity to help you help others.
Absolutely. Well, at the same time this is going on, like I said, we are serving more people than ever. So we are always welcoming volunteers. We have volunteers come every day. We could not do the work that we do without our volunteers. And there's always the option of donating as well. In addition to these potential cuts, we have had pretty significant cuts earlier this year from the USDA, about 6.3 million pounds of food that we no longer have access to. And we're really trying to figure out how are we going to keep up with demand based on reduced food levels.
So you're saying, wait, so the agriculture department used to send you food and they're not doing it?
Yeah, so the cuts came in two ways. One was food through the Emergency Food Assistance Program. We still do get food through that program, but was significantly reduced. And then the other, you may have heard the governor has now filed legal action on a program called Local Food Purchase Assistance, which was $1.5 million that we were getting annually. And we were spending 100% of those dollars at local farms. To purchase milk, eggs, and produce, fresh local food going straight from local farms right to our neighbors. Was an amazing program, and now we're not moving forward. We won't have access to those dollars or that food that was all coming out of the USDA. So it's about $5 million worth of food loss that we're trying to make up the difference for.
And that, obviously, that harms those farmers.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And the SNAP cuts will harm farmers as well. So, we know for every dollar spent in groceries through the SNAP program, about a quarter of it goes back into the farming community. They accept SNAP at farmers markets, as I said. And farmers are really great partners with us in the fight against hunger, and we hate to see them, have these negative impacts as well.
Boy, oh boy! All righty, my gosh, Colleen, thank you for being there, for being in this fight for people in need. I'm so appreciative. Thank you.
Well, thank you, and thank you for your support of the food bank, and happy to be able to have this conversation and share with your listeners, just how important these issues are, and look forward to working together as we move forward.
Thank you, Colleen. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye. You too. Man, I'm glad she spoke up. I don't see her on my little thing. Colleen Young, who is with the Greater Pittsburgh Community Food Bank. That is an operation that is just astonishingly impressive, by the way. But that the need has never been greater, and now we have in office these cruel people who want to give billionaires tax cuts, and they're taking food out of the mouths of children and old people and sick people in order to do it. That is evil incarnate. Just want to say evil incarnate. I was looking at a headline here. GOP child credit would raise subsidy but exclude poorest families. This is another thing that is in that bill. And it involves the child tax credit, which has been, at $2,000 or $2,500. They want to raise it. But it turns out they're only raising it. They've jiggered it so that a third of children in this country would not receive the full credit because their parents don't make enough money. So the poorest Americans, these are people with jobs. So again, they keep giving aid to people with and keep denying it or taking from people without. I'm just looking at this and I'm thinking, what? Those excluded from the maximum aid include 65% of children with single mothers, 51% of Black children, 44% of Latino children, and 40% of kids in rural America. The Republicans say to them, screw you. Go starve. Barbara is saying that Tom Hartman had said the Germans waited too long, the Hungarians waited too long, the Russians waited too long, the Italians waited too long, and then it was too late, and their nations fell into autocracy. Are Americans about to join that tragic club? Well, I think we'll start to get an answer in a few days on Saturday. And if Americans don't peacefully take to the streets in numbers never seen before, then I guess they don't care. They don't care, which would be something. All right, guys. Well, thank you very much for joining me today. I know I'm dyspeptic, and it's hard not to be. It is. I'll try to get my mood in a slightly better place for tomorrow. The sun might help. It couldn't wait.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Thursday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper or its advertisers.